Welcome to Flunking the Written, a fully spoiled Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast in which two Uber fans break down every episode of the show. Join Kimberly and Megan every other Tuesday as they overanalyze each scene and discuss the Buffyverse at large. Now let's meet up with the Scoobies and get into this episode of Flunking the Written.
What can I say? I flunked the written.
All right, Kim, it is time to start our discussion of The Wish, which was written by Marty Noxon and directed by David Greenwalt. And the DVD blurb is, after Cordelia tells her new friend Anya that she wishes Buffy had never come to Sunnydale, she suddenly finds herself in a reality where vampires control the town.
It's technically accurate.
Technically accurate. But
it does not come close to the level of excitement the first time a fan watches this episode.
Yes, and this is one of those great, like, what if episodes.
Yeah.
And it is, by and large, a filler episode. It turns out to, like, be significant in a number of ways. This is where we get introduced to Anya, and, you know, there's some cool bits in it, but they were accidental. By and large, this is a filler episode, and it is one of the best, when it comes to just, because it doesn't really do anything to progress the arc at all. But man, it's a solid episode.
Yeah, it's a fan favorite, definitely.
Yeah, I enjoy it a lot.
And it coincides really well with Doppelganger, not too much further along in this season.
Yeah.
Where it is, like when I was watching the scene where Willow gets dusted, I was like, oh, she just came back. You know? But yeah, the beginning scene when they're having a random picnic in the woods.
Yeah.
And a slime demon finds them. That scene seems fairly cheesy.
It's weird. It doesn't really seem like something that they would do. Buffy's just really into picnics this season, because she did one at the beginning of the season when she couldn't go on campus, and then they did one now. Like, this is what kids did in the late 90s, right? They just went and picnicked.
I don't remember that so much.
It's very relatable content. I called this demon, like, basically the 2.0 version of the fish monsters from Go Fish. It's kind of like they just took that bodysuit and then added some extra stuff to the head, and that's what they did.
One thing that I noted, and I don't know that a lot of people will notice during the first scene, they mention Faith. Mm-hmm. As in Faith was supposed to be there and didn't show up. Like, they discussed like she was supposed to be there. Mm-hmm. And then she didn't come. This conversation feels very deja vu-y. But yeah, they have the little conversation about how she was supposed to come, and then Buffy couldn't reach her, and that she's off by herself a lot. Mm-hmm. So
there's little hints. I said that this doesn't progress the main arc much, but there are little hints that are trickled out. We're just not in the main world much. It doesn't take long for us to get into the Wishverse, and then obviously all of that's existent only in that realm. So they're having their picnic, as you do when you're a teenager in the late 90s, and get attacked by a demon, as you do when you're a teenager in Sunnydale. And Buffy's being pinned up, and she's shouting for a nerf, a nerf, clearly, which is what Willow thinks when she's searching for a weapon, and then realizes that it's actually probably a knife. And Buffy dispatches of said demon with the knife, and that's when they have the conversation about Faith. This is kind of, it's just here to, I guess, set the groundwork in case you missed the last episode and be like, all right, so Xander and Willow were caught, Cordelia and Oz are estranged from the group, and the one, like, piece that I really noted on is the way in which Xander handled the conversation about what to do after breakups by asking Buffy how she got over Angel, like, And I just feel like that's very uncharacteristic of Xander to be like that, like curious about Buffy and Angel's relationship and how she's dealing with that. But that line just always felt just a little strange to me because it read as a moment of understanding and empathy towards Buffy that Xander doesn't normally have when it comes to her relationship with Angel.
Yeah. And it doesn't come back again. Like, it doesn't last. Mm-hmm. Although, I mean, he's not really being sympathetic. He's asking for advice.
Yeah.
For himself.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if it's too empathetic.
Mm-hmm. It is, in a way, tone deaf in the fact that Buffy and Angel's breakup could be even close to what Xander is feeling after his breakup with Cordelia.
Yeah, no, he didn't have to kill Cordelia.
Yeah, he didn't have to kill Cordelia. He was, in fact, cheating on Cordelia.
And, like, Buffy and Angel are now completely aware that they can never, ever be together physically.
Yeah.
And Xander, at this point, still has, like, maybe Cordelia and I'll get back together. So, yeah, very different.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't, but at this point, they don't.
Yeah. Buffy says that she deals by, having her friends, and then we cut to...
you guys.
Yeah, we cut to Cordelia alone in her room, burning pictures of all of her friends.
The very first time I saw this episode, I really thought Cordelia was doing a spell. Like, she's cutting the picture apart. She's got the little bowl, and she sets it on fire. And I was like, she's doing a spell. It's a spell. It's a spell. But then it wasn't.
No, it was just the traditional ritual of burning the pictures of your ex.
Yep.
It's interesting, though, that her ex includes all of the Scoobies. And that's kind of the catch with Cordelia. She joined this friend group. And now that she's estranged from Xander, she's also estranged from the rest of the group, or feels that way, or continues to put up those walls, as we kind of will see later on with Buffy.
It's hard for Cordelia because when she started dating Xander and hanging out with the Scoobies, she lost all her, like, sort of friends. Mm-hmm. And now she's lost all the new friends. So, she's kind of alone. Although I will point out that as mean as Harmony and everybody are to her in this episode, after this episode, she's, like, back in charge of them again. Like nothing happened.
Yeah, well, as much as I love Harmony, she is a bit of a pushover.
A little bit.
Is this where we go to opening credits? I don't actually have that in my notes.
Yes, this is where we go to opening credits.
All right, Buffy theme song. And then we come back at the high school.
And we are, at school. And Buffy and Willow are talking, and Willow is upset because she's pretty much stalking Oz, and he has not come to his locker.
Yeah, just so rude, not allowing her to stalk him.
And then Buffy asks about Cordy. Willow says that she looked scary. Like, rumors going around, she looks scary.
Yeah, she specifically says that Amy saw her last night at the mall, and that just makes me assume that they originally planned for Amy to be the extra person in the group in the Wishverse instead of Nancy. As much as I love Nancy. Nancy and her one line of dialogue. I kind of wonder if it was at one point thought that Amy would be that person.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was like, who's Nancy? I know who you're talking about now.
So I kind of think that maybe that was a line that was in an earlier version that they thought, okay, we're gonna have Amy, Larry, and Oz be your team up in the Wishverse. That would have been cool. I would have liked Amy in the Wishverse. I don't know how she would have been, how she would have been Amy and not her mom. There's some logic there, but I kind of think that was maybe part of the thought process there. So once Willow announces that Amy said that Cordelia looked pretty scary, we cut to Cordelia exiting her convertible, just like decked out in expensive clothes and like a leather skirt and just looking like she owns the place. And as she kind of gets further into school, she becomes less and less certain about herself. And then she sees Harmony and the other Cordettes. I mean, they're still Cordettes. Even though Cordelia hasn't been part of the group, they're still Cordettes. And there's kind of this awkward moment, and then Harmony approaches her and kind of just compliments her on her outfit, and then immediately wants to introduce her to Anya.
Yeah, and Cordelia's all excited. This is going to be, we're going back to normal.
Easy, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. She's going to be welcomed into the group with open arms. So they have this whole bit. Anya's got introduced, and then they kind of have a little back and forth, and then Cordelia says, oh, you were really smart, now we can, get over, Xander and all of that stuff, and Cordelia's like, who's Xander? And they have that little back and forth, and they say that she needs to start dating, and then the setup is that they're gonna recommend that she starts dating Jonathan, because he probably won't cheat on her. But the funny thing is that Cordelia dated Jonathan in an episode of season 2. She went on a date with Jonathan.
I remember that. And apparently we're supposed to have forgotten. This scene, I've always felt kind of bad for Jonathan, because even though he doesn't really look upset and Harmony is just trying to be mean to Cordy, they're being mean to him too.
Yeah. And there's I like the little look, that look of acknowledgement that both Cordelia and Jonathan have, that they've both been part of this, rude hazing that's gone on from Harmony. There's kind of just a little moment there and a little acknowledgement there that definitely wouldn't have been there for Cordelia earlier in the series.
Oh, yeah. No, definitely not.
So from there, we cut back to the halls, and Oz finally shows up, and Willow just look at us! Look at us running it since we go to the same school. How likely this is to happen, running into each other. Yeah. Oz is just kind of like, hey. And boy, does that not just sum both of them up perfectly.
Yeah. I really love this conversation.
Oh, it's great, isn't it?
I absolutely love it. And the level of self-awareness that Oz has. High school boys don't talk like that. Mm-hmm. That's just, it's awesome, and I love it, but I don't believe it's realistic.
Yeah.
I want to make it up to you. I mean, if you let me, I want to try.
You can leave me alone. I need to figure things out.
But maybe if we talk about it, we could...
Look, I'm sorry this is hard for you, but I told you what I need. So I can't help feeling like the reason you want to talk is so you can feel better about yourself. That's not my problem.
My main issue with Oz, I love Oz, but he's not a character that I spend a lot of time analyzing and thinking about, because he's kind of the too perfect guy. He's just, they don't really deep dive into Oz the way I kind of hoped they would. In a lot of ways, he's just there to be Willow's boyfriend. And I think the biggest misstep in this arc is getting Willow and Oz together again as fast as they did. I think they should have had a longer separation. I think they should have had Oz be a strong, independent man that don't need no witch.
Yeah. I remember when I was first watching this, I wanted them back together. I didn't really care about Xander and Cordy, but I wanted Oz and Willow to get back together. I was like, no, they have to. I was devastated.
Yeah. It just feels rushed to me.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure the next episode starts with him saying, okay, let's get back together. I've thought about it now.
Amends?
Yeah.
The Christmas one. Yeah. But he does try to slow them down, because isn't there a scene where she wants to go ahead and have sex, and he's like, yeah, I'm not ready anymore.
Yeah.
Also not realistic for a teenage boy. I'm just saying.
I do think...
But, the boundary setting and the things that he says in this conversation, I would have trouble getting all that sorted in my head and said this way. And I'm a, almost 42-year-old woman.
Uh-huh.
There's no way.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
It's wonderful. And
it was probably a really good lesson for a lot of kids.
Yeah. It's a great...
teenagers and stuff.
It's a great message. I feel like this kind of falls in a similar place to the interaction between Giles and Ginny from, I think it was in Ted, where she has that moment where she's just like, you're making me feel bad that I don't feel better, or whatever it is, and has that similar, these are the boundaries I have placed. Understand them. And I like when characters verbally acknowledge that. And man, yeah, like the way this scene plays and the recognition I think also that Willow has when she realizes that Oz is correct in what he's saying is also super powerful. That she completely is self-aware of that fact that, yeah, she's just trying to make things better. Like the core Willow fashion, she just wants things to be okay. She just wants things to be better, and she'll try to force them to be better.
Then we have Cordelia walking through the hallway, and she sees Xander. So she grabs the first guy there and asks him if there's something in her teeth.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have another high school boys don't think like this moment when John Lee is kind of like, well, you know, the coaches put me on second string and the guys are kind of down on me for it, but like we can do something in secret if you want. But like he says, if anybody saw me hanging with Xander Harris's cast off, and I don't believe that would be the reaction of the boys at Sunnydale High.
Yeah.
I believe that they would be falling all over themselves to hit on her, no matter what had just happened. Okay, so I was not popular in high school at all.
Uh-huh.
And like elementary school, middle school kind of made fun of a lot. But in high school, it doesn't really happen. Like once kids get to a certain age, they don't really say stuff flat out like this, I don't think.
Yeah.
It's more you just ignore each other.
Well, and I mean, has dating Xander really hurt Cordelia's popularity? Because, I mean, she still, like, ran for the homecoming queen and, like, got a lot of attention there. She didn't win, so maybe that's a sign that she's lost popularity. But I don't think it'd be to the level where, like, nobody would want to be seen dating her. I mean, it's still Cordelia.
That's what I feel like, too. I don't think he would call her Xander Harris's cast off to her face.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that would never happen. So, yeah, and then you can just see the look on Cordelia's face. She's stunned. She's just stunned that someone would talk to her like this. And then Anya turns up to talk to Cordy and is basically like, oh, thank God, can't stand Harmony and those other girls. You're so real and mature and impressive. Let me be your friend. And so they start talking, and they kind of start talking about clothes and bags, and Cordelia points out Anya's necklace, which, you know, a moment of excitement for people who have seen the show before.
Yeah.
And then we get the first time Anya tries to get her to wish. Cordelia is complaining. She's like, I'm not even going to think about him. I'm past it. I'm going to live my life. And Anya says, I know, but don't you kind of wish he'd... And I every time I see that since the first time, I'm like, yep, there you go. Trying to get somebody to make that wish. Which I think is kind of funny because she does that. And then there is a episode in season 6 where Dawn makes a wish to a vengeance demon. And that vengeance demon gives her wish, and she didn't know what she was doing either. Mm-hmm. Like both these situations, they made wishes not realizing they were making wishes. But a lot of times during the series, whenever Anya will talk about her days as a vengeance demon, she talks about all the women and stuff who would summon her to make wishes. Mm-hmm. Not that she would like go to them and try to convince them to make a wish like she needs a quota or something.
Yeah, I think she does need a quota. I think the way that the Vengeance Demon scheme works is it's basically multi-level marketing. You gotta have so many cells, you gotta have so many Vengeance Demon recruits. It is the most bureaucratic, nonsensical, demonic process ever, and I love that about it. And I think, like, yeah, she'll get summoned to have so many vengeance gigs, but at a certain point, to be the top, and we know Anya's the top, we know Halfrek's the top, those are the top people, you have to also do some freelancing, right? You actually have to go in and you know, work the streets a little bit and find the randoms that need it, that don't know that they need it. And I think
don't know that it exists.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. I think that's it.
And I also think this whole necklace thing being her center of power thing is kind of funny because, like, after this episode, that just disappears.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Like, that's not a thing anymore. Ever.
They definitely still have, like, amulets, but I've never really fully understand how the amulet works as their power source overall. Like, I feel like the Vengeance Demon lore I'm going to pay attention to through this watch through because, like,
some of it doesn't add up.
It doesn't necessarily add up. I will say I'm glad they got rid of the gravelly voice.
Yeah.
I'm glad they decided to not bring that one back.
But, like, the whole her losing her center of power and so not being able to be a demon anymore and stuff, that's just, it doesn't make sense later with all the things we learn about vengeance demons. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then we're at the Bronze, and we have Anya and Cordelia are hanging out, talking and laughing with some guys, which I find funny because, like, the stuff John Lee said to her, but now they're flirting with some guys who are apparently all into them.
Yeah.
See, it doesn't make sense.
John Lee's just a snob.
Apparently.
He's just the worst.
Then Xander is sitting with Buffy and Willow and, like, trying to get them to pretend they're laughing.
Yeah.
So that they can, I guess, show that they're having a good time without Cordelia. Very mature of Xander. But then Buffy says this thing, and I'm just like, really? Really, Buffy? She says, I don't know, Xander. I'm here for you. I'm supporto gal, but I feel kind of funny doing the us against Cordelia thing. She's had a rough time. Now, Buffy, come on. You can't stand Cordelia. You make fun of her all the time. You insult her all the time. Like, now all of a sudden you're on her side?
I was about to say, there was a very recent episode that happened where they were kind of at war with each other. But, you know.
Yeah.
She feels weird about being against Cordelia. I have a theory, though, because I feel like the part of me that loves the Buffy and Cordelia relationship, or the image in my mind that I have, that relationship being, had the show played a little bit differently, likes the moments here where Buffy really tries to reach out to Cordelia and really seems concerned for Cordelia, and the way that Cordelia kind of reflects Buffy in a lot of ways. And that empathy going out towards Cordelia is also a situational thing where she herself is dealing with just being, you know, forced to remove herself entirely from Angel in order to keep themselves safe. And so, like, I can see a part of this playing out to where her being more friendly towards Cordelia is also a reflection of that shadow self side that Cordelia plays for Buffy, where Cordelia is the reality that Buffy would have had she not been called, kind of deal. I can kind of see that there's some play there. I also think that when you get into her kind of being supportive but also kind of confused by Xander in a few moments. There's the scene earlier where she's just like, your logic does not resemble our Earth logic. I think part of the reason that she throws out that she's supporto gal for Xander has more to do with Willow than it has to do with Xander, because they're both equally guilty in what happened, and Willow is already tearing herself up so much. And so, like, part of Buffy being as supportive of Xander, even though Xander is not approaching any of this responsibly and talking about how, oh, it was Cordelia's fault, and oh, why, you know, let's make her think that I've completely moved on and I'm over it, kind of deal. And while she's kind of having that moment, she's still saying, you know, I'll be here for you, Xander. I'll support you and all of that. I think a lot of that comes from, I don't want to say how in the wrong you are, because I'm afraid that's going to come back and make Willow feel even more guilty. And she's already digging herself in a hole.
So they end their conversation kind of with Buffy wanting chocolate, or asking everybody who wants chocolate. Then we see Cordelia leave the Bronze. She just walks out, like, says goodbye to Anya, or says, I'll see you later to Anya or something, and leaves. And I don't know, it's not really obvious if she's leaving to go home or what. She doesn't have a coat or a purse, so she basically just walks outside at night in Sunnydale for some reason. But then Buffy follows her to talk to her, and Cordelia immediately assumes that Xander sent Buffy. Buffy's like, no, I wanted to talk to you. And I have to point something out here. You're going to love this. I have to point this out, that they are again dressed for different seasons, but this time it's Buffy who's dressed for winter.
Yeah.
And Cordelia who's dressed for, well, what she's actually doing, a night at the club.
It even shows Buffy, like, pause to go and grab her jacket before she exits, because I guess she might be cold. I don't know.
Yeah.
She's like, I can't go outside without my jacket.
But I saw that and I was like, oh, Buffy's not the one that's supposed to be freezing all by herself this time. This time it's Cordelia.
Yeah, just Cordelia's cold tonight.
Anyway, Buffy's just like, anything you want. And Cordelia's just like, yeah, to be rid of all of y'all. And Buffy's like, I know what it's like. If you want to talk, we can talk. And then a vampire comes out. And Cordelia gets knocked into some trash by the dumpsters. Although, I mean, like, she did just stand there while Buffy fought a vampire. I mean, she didn't try to run away or get out of the way or anything. So kind of a little bit her bad. So she gets up, and then Harmony and all her little friends come out and see her, and they start laughing and making fun of her. In the script, they're still called the Cordettes.
Yeah.
And it literally says Harmony and the Cordettes. And I'm like, well, are they not the, like, Harmony Dettes or something?
No, they're still the
right
Cordettes. They're always going to be the Cordettes. I stand by that. The script has it correct.
Cordelia gets up and she kind of goes off on Buffy about why does this always happen to me, and says, I finally figured it out. And we cut to back at the school during the day, and Cordelia is saying, Buffy Summers is where all my troubles started. Then Harmony comes by again and tells her she was dumpster chic last night. And then Anya takes off her necklace and gives it to Cordelia. Which, if that's really her power center, why? Why would you do that? And, like, how do you plan to get it back once the wish starts?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
So here's the thing that really confuses me, and I may have just missed it, but, like, I watched this episode twice, and I still don't really know the timeline of this necklace. So this necklace gets placed on Cordelia, and then goes with her to the Wishverse, so that Giles gets it later, but then after Giles summons Anyanka, she's just suddenly wearing it again?
Yeah. It's a magic necklace.
It is a magic necklace. I mean, that's true. So maybe
it makes no sense why Anya puts it on Cordelia. But then Cordelia says something. And I actually had to, because it was a little mumbled, I rewound this like 3 times to listen to it and make sure. Because in the script book, Cordelia's sentence is, yeah, I could use some luck and a big stick with pointy sharp bits. If that Buffy wasn't a Slayer, I swear. And my immediate thought when I read that was, so, like, Anya has no questions about this? Because she's supposed to be, just a high school girl. And, like, Cordelia's talking to her like she knows everything. And she's not, what's a Slayer?
Yeah.
I mean, as a demon, she might know. But, like, she knows that she shouldn't know, In the actual episode, though, I guess they changed it up a little bit because they realized.
Yeah.
And she just says, if that Buffy wasn't. But she still says, I need a big stick with pointy sharp bits. If that Buffy wasn't, and then stops. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'd still have some questions. I would still be like, what do you want a big stick for? Anya's still trying to get her to make a wish. And she eventually says, I wish Buffy Summers had never come to Sunnydale. And Anya becomes, let's see, I want to quote this right, a hideous demonic vision.
Oh, so she's still a vision. I agree with that. Yeah. She's still a vision.
Blank eyes, white and veiny skin, and she smiles with a horrible brown-toothed evil grin and utters in a gnarly deep voice, done.
Gnarly deep voice.
Yeah, it's got to be gnarly and deep.
Gnarly. So yeah, we cut to Wishverse.
Yes.
And Cordelia's still standing outside of the school, but everything's a little different. There's suddenly a lot less people. Buffy and gang aren't there. Anya's not there. And the few people that are there seem very quick on their feet and just focused on getting to their destinations. And there's some trash and stuff strewn about for effect. Mm-hmm. And that's when Cordelia repeats her wish.
I wish Buffy Summers had never come to Sunnydale. She was like a good fairy. A scary, veiny, good fairy.
And then she's all excited, so she turns and starts walking down the hall Now, I noticed during this scene, her hair is like on a trampoline or something. It is so bouncy. Like, it literally bounces inches off her back.
She's got that
as she
extra
walks.
spring in her step. She's so excited.
Yeah.
It's all reflected in her hair.
Oh, it's like extreme bounce. But the description of what the school is supposed to look like, less crowded than usual, and a number of lockers stand open. But the ones that are closed are all draped with garlic and crosses and all sorts of freaky talismans.
I did notice, like, the abundance of crosses and garlic that were kind of strewn about in the background. There's also several posters about curfew and such.
Daytime dates are fun.
Yeah. So, yeah. I like the set decoration that they did is kind of fun because, like, when I was first... Because I watched this episode twice this time. When I first watched it, I was focused on the characters and the dialogue, and I didn't really absorb the background. And the second time I watched it, I was really paying attention to the school, and I was like, oh, there's so much that they put into the background on this.
So did you see the portraits of the principals?
No, I didn't.
I didn't either, and I didn't know if I missed it or if it just wasn't in there. But Cordelia is supposed to walk past a framed photograph in remembrance of Principal Flutie, and then one in remembrance of Principal Snyder, and then one in remembrance of Principal Jackson, and then one in remembrance of Principal Fuller. And those are the only ones. So I'm guessing there is currently a fifth principal, but I just thought that was funny.
Yeah, it's a nice touch.
All the principals. It was a nice touch. But then she sees Harmony and her friends, and they run to her. They're all excited. It's Cordelia, and she's still the leader. Mm-hmm. And then we have a much more normal John Lee asking her to consider going to the winter brunch. Which I love that the school in the town that is, like, infested with vampires, instead of, like, just shutting the school down or everybody moving somewhere else, they instead have a winter brunch instead of a winter formal or winter ball or whatever.
Yeah. I understand, like, some people are kind of stuck where they are, but, like...
No, I'd figure it out. I figured out this situation.
Cordelia's family, I think Harmony's family, like, several of these families that still exist in Sunnydale are pretty well off. I think they would be able to figure out how to relocate.
So then we're in the classroom, and in the script, she's apparently wearing a red dress, but in the episode, it's a blue one with, like, a little bright blue thing on it. And everyone else is dressed in, like, neutral colors. It does make sure to point out that Harmony and the Cordettes are very stylish. Still, just dull stylish.
Dull stylish.
So the teacher is teaching them and says, okay, the bell rings and he's like, okay, don't forget, tomorrow we have our monthly memorial, no class, and grabs his stuff and takes off. Which, okay, here's my thing. Everybody's rushing to get home before it gets dark and they hit curfew and stuff. So let's just say there's a town. It's overrun, infested with vampires. That's a problem. But there's some kind of, I don't know, spell or something where nobody can leave the town, which is the only reason I can think of all these people are still here.
Yeah.
Can we not, like, adjust the school hours so that we have time to get home in the evening before it gets dark? Like, do we have to stay until 4 o'clock or whatever? Like, if it's going to get dark at 4:30, how about we end school at 2? It's just an idea. It's just an idea.
Just an idea. Now, what's funny is that it's implied in several places that the whole world is terrible right now, which is so funny to me because Buffy still is around. She just moved to a different place.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the Master was able to rise, but he still seems very focused on Sunnydale. So I don't know, maybe that's the explanation for where, like, Darla and Luke are, is that they've branched out and gone off, and there's a bunch of little Master minions that are all over the world, making the world, as by and large, just as terrible as Sunnydale, or close to.
Yeah, and I don't really get it, because Buffy, like, at this point in the series, she hasn't had a serious effect on the entire world except for Sunnydale. Like with Angel and the Judge, they were both trying to destroy the world, right? So those two situations, she saved the world. But in this reality, those didn't happen.
Right.
Because Angel had a lot to do with both of those, and Angel never turned. So those things never happened. So basically, it's the only, like, huge apocalyptic thing would be the Master. And he's still hanging out in Sunnydale creating a factory. Which I mean, looks like would be harder than just biting them.
Yeah,
me,
it's
but,
real dumb. It's not efficient at all. I don't understand the point. Instead of just eating them where you find them and leaving them on the ground, you're going to instead drag them back. What it really is, here's what it is. It's a way for the Master to, like, have the elitist vamps be, like, all hoity-toity with their wine glasses of blood while all the lackey vamps actually have to go out in the streets and gather up the food. That's what it really is.
You are so right. You are so right.
It has nothing to do with efficiency or mass production or anything like that. It is just, I don't want to have to deal with going out on the streets and hunting down food. And when I try to eat an actual person, they look at me and it ruins my appetite. So I'm just going to drink from my, crystal glass here and be all dainty. I love how dainty the Master is in this episode. We haven't even gotten to the Master yet. Let's move on. So yeah, class is dismissed, and Cordelia starts asking what the rush is, and Harmony's like, well, Mom hates when I'm late, and she's just like, well, let's go out tonight. Harmony finally is just like, what is wrong with you? Like, you're saying we should go to the Bronze, none of this is right. And Cordelia makes up the excuse that she hit her head, and then asks about Xander and Willow in hopes that they aren't doing well in this reality, and Harmony confirms that, yeah, I would say that because they're dead. And you have this little moment where Cordelia has to deal with her feelings. So yeah, that's sad. And then we have this moment. So Cordelia goes to the parking lot, her car isn't there, she gets all mad at the janitor, who is definitely of certain ethnicity, and in trying to explain to this janitor that her car is missing, she says El Convertible. And I'm just like, why?
Yeah, she gets a little racist here.
Yeah,
a little bit. And he calls her Miss.
Yeah, which
I find oddly uncomfortable. When he says, go on now, Miss, I'm like, no, don't do that.
So, but here's my other question. Why aren't they allowed to drive? Like, what's the reasoning?
The vampires might get in their cars? I don't know.
Like, they could get home faster, or is it only like they have to do the bus and Cordelia just missed the bus and that's the only way that they're allowed to be transported back and forth from school because there's adult supervision the entire time? I don't know.
Well, you'd think there would be, like, a better system.
Yeah.
To make sure people get home. Because, like, she's now, the next scene, she's walking around town. And, look, I get it. It's very different. There's no Buffy and everything. But does she think that because there's no Buffy, there's no vampires anymore? Like, does Cordelia think they're all gone? Because she's just, like, hanging out around. And it seems like she's been very oblivious. Because there's been lots of sign that stuff is dangerous now.
Yeah.
Like, dangerous. So, I mean, it's still Sunnydale. She should be a little bit more nervous than she is, I think.
Should be able to piece it together, right?
Yeah. And then she sees Xander. I remember my excitement in this first episode and how much it was like, because I realized immediately that they were vampires. Mm-hmm. You can tell. Mm-hmm. Like, she did not realize. She keeps just talking to them like they're normal. And I'm just like, the first time I watched it, I didn't think about it because I was just too busy, fangirling over Xander and Willow being vampires. But I was watching it this time, and I was like, how does she not see it? Mm-hmm. Like, they're both completely different. They're both, like, all pale, and, like, she knows about vampires. Like, if she didn't know about vampires, this would make sense. But she already knows about them. So why is she oblivious to this for so long?
I love the little moment. Like, Xander basically spells it out for her, but I love the little moment where he's just like, now why would Harmony say I'm dead? Let's think about that.
I love that too. Yeah, I love it. Love it, love it, love it. But, I mean, at this point, Xander and Willow don't know that Cordelia, like, is from a different reality.
Right. I think it's interesting. This is deeper into like the mechanics of the wish and how does it work. So like this reality was created presumably around Cordelia. Mm-hmm. So like there's this idea that Cordelia existed in this reality for the other people in the reality, but it was a different version of Cordelia, and now our Cordelia, it's kind of like what happens with Dawn later, right? Everybody in this reality has false memories of Cordelia from, I guess, the beginning of the series to current time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the ways in which this series can just create universes and make me think about, like, how does this work? Like, how do these memories work? Because they all have memories of Cordelia, and Cordelia is technically alive in this reality, but she never existed in this reality because our Cordelia created this reality literally the second she appeared in it. Mm-hmm. So in this timeline, Cordelia wouldn't have really had any of the interactions with Xander and Willow that she did, because Buffy never came to town, and that was kind of what started to bridge that gap. So while Cordelia's telling Xander that they need to find Buffy, that she'll make things better, Willow walks in with the lovely phrase board now, and I just wrote in all caps in my notes, "She said it!"
So we get one of the absolute best things about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the first viewing of Vampire Willow. And we only ever get to see Vampire Willow twice, but both times are so awesome.
Yes.
Xander and Willow do such a good job here.
Yeah. So here's my thing. There was that little scene earlier where they fully disengaged from the relationship, right? Because there's that little moment in the bronze earlier where Xander touches Willow's knuckles and she's just like, no, all my parts are for Oz, basically. And you even kind of have a little bit of an echo of that. I think the wording's slightly different in one place or the other, where Vamp Willow is like, I love this part, and Xander's like, you love all the parts. So it's kind of like, in a weird way, echoing each other, like, but like, here's my thing. The Xander and Willow relationship is doomed. Like, it was never going to be a good relationship. But Vamp Xander and Vamp Willow are made for each other.
100% made for each other.
And I don't know why. Like, the chemistry of Vamp Xander and Vamp Willow, I'm just like, yes, that makes sense. That's the relationship for me. But man, does it work.
They could never be another for either of those vampires.
No.
Xander turns into a vampire.
Yeah.
And Cordelia finally catches on that she wished Buffy gone, which means Xander and Willow are vampires.
Yeah.
And she takes off running, at which point we meet the White Hats, which are Oz, Larry, a girl named Nancy, and Giles.
It's a good group.
Who have all managed to,
That's a good group. Nancy, MVP.
Yes. And they stop in a van, which I assume is Oz's van, and all jump out holding crosses, grab Cordelia, put her in the van, and drive away. Mm-hmm. And then we switch to the library where go ahead.
So, why the library?
Right. Why the library? Why are we not in a better place? Because this is one of the only places that the vampires can literally walk in. Like, why are we not in someone's house where they can't walk in? This is the situation where we're infested with vampires. The situation's out of control, but we're still going to put our base where they can just walk in at any time. Because, like, Giles has a house. I'm assuming with all the vampires around, there's a lot of empty houses in Sunnydale they could take over.
Oh, man.
You know?
Goodness.
I thought that too. Like, why?
That bothered me so much when I was just like, why are they at the library at night?
And
this
with
is
them
so
doing
dumb.
something like that, how have they not been killed or turned into vampires yet?
No. Anyway, so Cordelia's laid out in the library. they're commenting on her outfit, which is when we get Nancy's like one and only line, which is, what was she doing wearing that? Everybody knows that vampires are attracted to bright colors. And I'm just like, when was this established?
Right? Like, when did we learn this? They're not fish. I mean, I actually don't know if fish are attracted to bright colors or not. I think sharks might be. I have no idea.
I've lost it. I've lost everything. Anyway, Giles tells them to go and watch the perimeter in case any of the vampires followed, because that makes way more sense than actually going to a place where they can't enter. And we cut to the bronze. And I just, like, so there's this moment where Xander and Willow enter the club, and they're just kind of, like, moving through the crowd, and along the way, they're just kind of showing the way that vampires have taken over the bronze. Along the way, Xander, like, runs his hand across a man's chest, and, like, we already know Vamp Willow enjoys petting females, and I just wrote that Willow and Xander's bisexual sides are both reflected in their vampire selves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, we haven't gotten there yet, but when Xander watches Willow torture Angel, I think he's watching Angel as much as he's watching Willow, maybe more so. He's really into that.
You think so? I didn't catch that.
Oh, man. There's just subtle eye movements
It's
there.
possible.
So, yeah, and then they go into the back room, and then we get the reveal that it's the Master who's running everything. He's got his little, like, curtained off area, and he stands and greets them by name.
We kind of get the impression that Xander and Willow are his like right-hand men.
Yeah, they're the new Luke and Darla.
Yep, and then they're in a private room where it's supposed to be the Bronze meets Scarface.
Oh, is that also in the script book?
That is also in the script.
Oh, man.
The decorations are the Bronze meets Scarface.
It's beautiful. So this is when we get the lovely line from the Master where he's just like,
I've lost my appetite for this one. She keeps looking at me. I'm trying to eat and she looks at me.
and man, this actress acts her ass off here. Because she is just straight up just staring at the Master in one of the most uncomfortable ways, to where, like, yeah, I wouldn't want to eat that either. Her eyes are just locked on him, and it's great. But anyway, he offers her to Willow, who's eager to get some munchies. And he says, I remember that lust for the kill, which I think is, like, interesting. I think that's one of the more interesting lines from the Master here, is, like, the idea that he no longer has that kind of bloodlust. He's just kind of into blood for the sustenance, I guess, just to keep him going.
Yeah. I just have to point out, can we take a second to appreciate how smooth this handoff is? Because he hands this girl to Willow, and Willow just, it is so smooth. She just turns as she bites the neck and pulls her around, and it's perfect. And her hair fans out. It's just, yeah. It's wonderful. It's almost as great as Cordelia's hair bouncing a foot off her head when she walks in this episode. Okay, so then they tell the Master about Cordelia and mention Buffy. With Xander does a little joke about Buffy's name and how silly it is. Mm-hmm. And the Master gets serious real quick. He's like, a Slayer right now? No.
I love
and
the
then
bit.
Basically threatens them they better go take care of it.
Yeah. I love the bit where he's just like, she talked of summoning the Slayer and you didn't kill her, and Willow's just like, well, they had crosses. There's lines throughout this episode that Vamp Willow says that just bring me such delight, and that's definitely one of them.
Yeah. Like, if they had crosses, we can't fight somebody with a cross.
I do have a theory.
Goodness.
I do have a theory that I'll get into a little bit later that kind of plays off of this, but I just love that delivery. There's a couple of lines from Vamp Willow that just bring me such glee, and that's one of them.
Okay, and then we go to the library where Cordelia is starting to wake up, and Giles is there, and Cordelia starts talking to Giles like they are in the other reality. And Giles is like, hey, are you crazy? It's not what he says. I'm kidding. Giles tries to get her to calm down. And then Cordelia's like, no, you have to get Buffy. Buffy changes it. It wasn't like this. And then gets kind of suspicious, like, wait, why are you here? You're her watcher. And Giles wants to know, like, how she knew that. And I have questions about the Watcher Slayer situations. Mm-hmm. Because, like, did they just have a Watcher in every possible city waiting to see if Buffy showed up? And she just happened to show up in Sunnydale? Because that's not the impression you get at the beginning. Uh-huh. And it's not the impression you get from some of the other situations where, like, there's some Watchers who receive their Slayer when they're, like, toddlers and they raise them. Mm-hmm. So that's not where, like, the Slayer would just be like, okay, I'm going to go to New York now. And the guy who's raised her and trained her since she was 2 was like, oh, okay, there's another Watcher there waiting for you. Yeah. Giles would still be her Watcher. Giles would have went to Cleveland with her. He wouldn't still be the librarian in Sunnydale.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. In this reality, Giles shouldn't be here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know that I've mentioned a bunch of things that don't make sense and don't really track. This is the one that seems like big enough that it actually bothers me. The others are just kind of funny little things. This one, Giles shouldn't be here. Mm-hmm. Buffy shouldn't have a different Watcher or anything. If she didn't come to Sunnydale, Giles wouldn't have come to Sunnydale. It's kind of, I mean, that's kind of it.
Yeah.
Because the very first episode, he said he was waiting for her.
Yeah. And, like, Willow confirms that he's new. Like, he came to Sunnydale because that's where Buffy was supposed to go. So it would track that if they learned that Buffy was going to Cleveland, that's where Giles would have been sent. Yeah, there's no... I mean, I could come up with something super random that would make it make sense. But there's no real way to make it make sense. And I feel like I don't know how Giles ended up in Sunnydale, but I do like the idea that he got to Sunnydale and realized that his Slayer wasn't going to be there and that he wasn't going to be her Watcher, and decided to stay and fight anyhow because Sunnydale was in that bad of a shape. I do like that aspect, even though it doesn't make sense that he would have gone to Sunnydale. I do like the idea that at that point he was just like, no, this is where I need to be. This is my new calling, whatnot. I'm going to stay here and fight because I at least have some knowledge and some skills. You get into this conversation again with Angel. Like, why was... if
Angel there?
Yeah, if Angel was sent by the powers that be to be where Buffy was, which is basically what's, explained at the Becoming Part 1 episode, then they should have been able to figure out, oh, she's going to be in Cleveland. Let's send them there.
Yeah. Anyway, Giles is talking to her and he stops and he starts listening. And then he's like, I thought I heard something. Now you go ahead and explain everything slowly. And I'm like, Giles, no. You know that vampires can get in the building you're in. You know that. If you heard something, check it out.
Yeah.
Or, run. But Xander and Willow are there, and they lock him in the book cage, at which point Willow says, you're in a big cage.
That's another one of my favorite lines from her.
And then, okay, so I'm going to point out that there is a lot of kind of like sexual innuendo in this episode. Mm-hmm. Like, because right now, Xander says, so you're a Watcher. Watch this. Which, I mean, you could kind of get something from that. But then he starts biting Cordelia on one side of her neck, and Willow gets the other side. And then the camera kind of pans where you can see the whole thing, and you can see Xander lift his hand up and put it on the back of Willow's head while they're both biting either side of Cordelia's neck, almost like they're kissing.
Yes.
And it's just kind of like, that also makes me a little uncomfortable. What's happening there?
God, I love it so much. This is actually the moment where I wrote in my notes that Vamp Willow and Xander are meant for each other. They are so meant for each other. This is like the most romantic thing for vampires to do, is share a kill like that and kiss each other through the neck. So romantic. So here's my issue. They had a conversation with the Master earlier in this episode about basically how Giles had to be dealt with. Like, he needs to be dealt with. They said specifically, he's like, he'll be dealt with soon enough. But still, these being the Master's, like, main guys that deal with the things that need to be dealt with, they go after Cordelia, kill Cordelia, and then they just leave Giles locked in a cage.
Well, Giles had crosses.
He did have crosses.
He had crosses in the cage.
Yep.
In the big cage.
So, we cut to commercial break, and then we come back to Giles swinging a battle axe. So we also had, like, axes and stuff in there, too, which might have also been part of the reason why they're just like, let's just leave him in the cage. But anyway, swinging a battle axe against the lock of the door until it opens magically, because that's how that works.
Yeah. I'm just going to point out, if it's that easy for Giles to open it, how come Oz never gets out?
It's a different reality. They haven't reinforced it as much. I don't know.
Yeah, it's reinforced in the other
Is
reality.
Oz a werewolf in this reality? Who knows?
That is a good question. I never thought of that. Oh my gosh. Because him getting bit by his cousin Jordy, that wouldn't have changed.
Yeah. We don't.
You know, he still should have got bit.
Yeah.
Does he still play the drums in a band?
He never played the drums. He played bass. Didn't he play bass?
I'm sorry.
Or lead guitar? He's something.
Yeah, he played a guitar. I'm sorry. Why did I think drums?
He's way too cool to be a drummer. Come on.
Hey. Okay, so he plays the guitar. Does he still play guitar in a van? In a van? Does he still play guitar in a van? Oh my God.
Again.
Does he still play guitar? Let me start this over. That's a good question about, like, everyone in this reality. Like, does Oz still play in a band? We don't really know anything about Nancy. Is Larry still gay?
Yeah, like, it's...
Well, Buffy not coming to Sunnydale wouldn't have changed that about Larry.
Yeah, I mean, is he out?
It might have changed whether or not Oz is still in a band.
Yeah. The great thing about this as a what if episode is there are so many questions that I have at the end of this episode, and none of it matters because this is just a made up reality that means nothing. But also I'm just like, but all of these questions. And I could literally spend hours asking questions about this episode and where people are and what's going on. Like, I have similar ideas like, is Joyce alive? We don't know that. We don't know what's happening with Joyce in this. We know that Buffy's a lot more grizzled and, like, more focused on just killing.
Yeah.
There's a scene.
Did Joyce go to Sunnydale?
Yeah.
And Buffy just went to Cleveland for some reason?
I don't know. Maybe there's no telling. There's a scene. It's just kind of a little Easter egg, but we kind of bypassed it when they're entering the bronze earlier. Faith is there. She's being drained by a vampire. She's in the shot being drained by a vampire, but she wouldn't be the Slayer, so she's just there somehow magically in Sunnydale as an Easter egg dying to a vampire, because, you know, why not? So, like, there's so many questions.
Yeah, this episode brings up a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm. But because it's just like, magic does what magic do, I'm like totally okay with it not making any sense, because it's literally just a made-up reality based on a single wish, and there's so much nuance to that you can't, you know, it's just, the chaotic nature of vengeance demons, I think, is one of the more interesting aspects of this. And, like, the fact that there's no limits to their power other than what someone's willing to wish for. And so, like, they have a certain creative control, because we got that for sure from Anya in season 7, where I think a girl wished for her ex to be a worm or something, and she made him the giant, like, slug demon.
From Tremors, the, like, creature from Tremors instead of, you know, a worm.
Yeah. So they have some creative control, some you know, creative license with the wish, but, like, it's very chaotic in nature, the type of magic that they mess with, and that makes me, like, I don't view any of this as plot holes so much as this is just the way vengeance demon magic works, and it doesn't make sense. So Nancy's dead, and I cry because Nancy was the best of us.
Best.
Giles tells Oz and Larry to take Cordelia to the incinerator, and, like, because
apparently they have something like that for bodies in the high school.
Yeah, that tracks. That makes sense to me. The cool thing about, like, the twist here is that you know, Cordelia is the one with the knowledge. She knows what's happening, and so you kill her off early enough in the episode to make people freak out, like, what's gonna happen? How are we gonna get out of this? Because Cordelia was the person who was supposed to get us out of this, and she's dead. I kind of wish that they had figured out a way to prolong this just a little bit longer, because this really doesn't, like, you have that moment of panic, and then immediately as they start to cart her off to the incinerator, Giles
takes the necklace,
and then you're like, so that's how they figure it out. I don't know how they would have done it, but I feel like it would be a cool thing to prolong that just a little bit longer.
And every single time I see that part of the episode where he takes her necklace off, I want to, like, make a snide comment about looting the bodies for stuff. It's like he's literally taking jewelry, and apparently it happens enough that Larry and Oz don't think it's weird. They're just okay, we'll stop for you to take her necklace and we'll keep going.
They gotta fund their operation somehow.
Yeah, but apparently, they don't comment on it. So it's, I guess, normal for us to take jewelry off the bodies.
So we cut back to the bronze, and the master is making him like a blood espresso. It's so cute. Him holding that tiny cup is like my favorite image. Just sipping and delighting in it, and it's just like, the master's kind of a hipster. Just gonna throw it out there right now. Xander and Willow report back saying that the deed is done and that Cordelia's dead. And Xander says it was too easy, and Willow says, I felt cheap. And that's just another line that I appreciate from her. Just God, Vamp Willow's the best, isn't she? So the master is well pleased, and Willow sees her opportunity to see if she can play with the puppy. She asks to play with the puppy, and so the master allows her to.
And we get to find out what the puppy is.
It's not actually a puppy. I was kind of disappointed myself.
Not a puppy.
Yeah, I would have preferred just Vamp Willow genuinely just like, scratching the ears of a puppy all day long and being like, this is how I pass my days. Just kind of like with Drusilla and Sunshine.
Actually, before we see the puppy, there's another scene where we see Giles on the phone talking to Buffy's watcher, asking her to come to Sunnydale. Mm-hmm. Just a real quick thing like that.
Yeah. We do get we've mentioned it a couple of times, but we do get the actual name drop of Cleveland. Which comes into play again much later in the series. But I guess there's a reason Buffy was drawn to these two specific towns.
Yeah. So then we're back to Willow and Xander, and they open a cage, and it's Angel, and they call him a puppy. Mm-hmm. And here's some more innuendo. This whole scene is sexual innuendo.
It's gonna be slow for you. That's right, puppy. Willow's gonna make you bark. Oh, maybe I went too hard on you last time.
And it's just like, oh my God.
There's so much in it, God.
Yes. Oh my.
So there is a moment. So as he says, I just want to watch you go, he like strokes the bars of the jail cell.
Yes.
And his eyes shift from her to him. And that's when I'm just like, more of that bisexual energy.
Like, seriously, this scene here could literally be the opening of a porn.
Oh, yes.
Easily. It's a fun scene to watch. I love it. I'm not complaining. I mean, it's Xander, Willow, and Angel. Nobody's complaining about this.
So, like, you watch this show, and you're just like, okay, so Willow's the sweet, innocent one, and Angel's like the brooding, dark vampire. And you're just like, there's never gonna be an instance in which she straddles him. And yet, they figured out a way.
And honestly, until it happens, you don't know that you needed to see it.
Yeah.
And then it happens, and you're like,
oh, yep. That's what I've been missing.
That is what has been missing. It's almost like one of those fan videos where they ship two different characters. Mm-hmm. And like it makes them look like they had a relationship.
Yeah. I have a running theory that like everybody in Buffy is shipped with everybody else in Buffy.
Yeah,
I
pretty
don't
much.
think there's a pairing that you could find that someone is just not like, yep, that's the one for me.
I haven't looked up any of those and watched them in a really long time. I used to watch them all the time. It's been a while. I might have to find some of them to watch.
Yeah, there's
fan-made videos. I love them.
There's a bunch of like fan ships that are not even remotely canon. Like I know Xander and Angel is a huge one. God, people wanted Xander and Angel so bad.
I don't like the idea of that one. I'm good with Angel and Spike.
Yeah.
But I don't really like Angel and Xander. One.
How are you about Xander and Spike?
I don't know about that one either.
That one seems more plausible to me.
It does seem more plausible, but I still don't know if I'm happy about it. But I could ship Spike with literally anyone else on the show.
That's like we've got.
I do not think there is
tangent.
anyone else on the show that I would not ship Spike with.
Yeah, like literally, like somebody made a comment because I posted an image of Spike and Angel on like a Buffy Discord, and somebody made the comment and they're just like, so you ship them, and I was just like, I ship Spike with literally everybody.
Yeah.
Everyone.
I mean, maybe not Joyce. That would be like it.
No, I'm for it.
Everyone else.
I'm for it. Joyce, get some, girl. Get some, Joyce.
Including Larry and Nancy. I'm good with that, too.
Nancy, the best of us. So, the group sans Nancy is at the library. We're going to get back into the episode.
Yeah.
And Giles is excited because he's found the amulet in a book and says it's the symbol of Anyanka, which Oz pauses for a second and says, don't think I know her. I just need more like Oz and Giles back and forth banter because it's the best. He explains that she's the patron saint of scorned women and she grants wishes. And so they kind of deduce that Cordelia wished for this, and Larry's just like, the entire world sucks because some dead ditz made a wish. And then there's another pause, and he's like, okay, just want to clear that up.
Yeah.
Like, there's something about this trio that really works for me. And I mean,
really works.
I love Nancy. I've declared that very firmly. But like, this trio works way better than I would have ever imagined it working. Like, I believe these three somehow found each other and started working together and developed this relationship. And that's saying something for these three.
And in this scene, I mean, Oz is still definitely Oz. Mm-hmm. Still his dry, sarcastic humor.
Giles says that he's gonna have to go home because he's got more volumes there that he can use for research. And so he leaves with the little parting words from Oz saying, watch your back. And we cut to him driving in the dark, and again, so that means that they were at the library at night. Like, I don't know how these people aren't dead at this point. But he's driving down one of Sunnydale's streets, and he noticed a van where people are being herded into the back by vampires, and he stops, and again, he has the power of the cross that kind of scares the vampires away, but he gets hit in the face with the door in, like, the most comical, just fantastic way of knocking Giles down that I've ever seen. It's just so perfect. And while he's down trying to like regain his composure, we start hearing the vampires fighting an unknown figure off camera, and then she reveals herself. Giles looks up and says Buffy Summers, and she says, that's right, want to tell me what I'm doing here? Okay.
Here's my thing with her.
Yeah.
Her being there. And it is almost as big of a deal as the whole Watcher plot hole.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't bother me as much, but it's as big of a thing. Like, we are literally, hold on just a second. Yeah. We are literally like less than an hour from him hanging up the phone with her Watcher, asking her Watcher, if she gets in touch with you, tell her we need her in Sunnydale. How did she get from Cleveland to Sunnydale?
I think it's longer than that. It's still not great because...
Well, we're still torturing the puppy.
Yeah, but the call happened before that scene.
Well...
So I think the timeline...
No, like, okay, the call was after Willow asked if she could play with the puppy.
Uh-huh.
Then there was the call. She asked if she could play with the puppy. There was the call. Then she's playing with the puppy. Then we are
Yeah, but she plays with the puppy during the day because she mentions that it's day. So it implies that it's the next night, that Giles called her one night, and then we see Willow playing with the puppy during the day, and then Buffy shows up that night.
But, yeah, it still doesn't make sense, though.
Yeah, it's still not enough time for her to be there, but it's not an hour. I think the day has passed. It's just not very clear in the way that the episode's laid out, because I think that's the only clue, really, is that she's just, like, all cooped up for hours because it's day, and so then it's night again, so that implies that the day has passed, because I think there's a little touch of sunlight or something that's kind of showing that it's day as well when she's playing with the puppy. So I love that we just refer to Angel as the puppy in this reality. He is forever the puppy. So Buffy looks a little different. Here's my concern, is that she's like tough, like all business Buffy, right? She's all business Slayer. She's wearing like combat boots and cargo pants and a muscle tank. Like she's like full on, and yet her hair is longer, and I'm just like, that's not practical. If you're gonna go that full on, go for like a buzz cut or something. Go short. She's got way long hair that's like braided and super neat, and I'm just like, that just seems like a hassle. The minorest thing that I'm gonna gripe about, but that's what I'm gonna gripe about anyway. So we come back to Giles's apartment. Buffy's there, just kind of like existing while Giles is trying to find more information about Anyanka, and he says that one must destroy her power center in order to defeat her, and then kind of like pats himself on the back that his watcher muscles haven't completely atrophied after all, and then Buffy's just like, well, what's her power center? And he's like, well, it doesn't say. And this is like my favorite back and forth here, is where she says, why don't I just put a stake through her heart? And Giles is like, she's not a vampire. And Buffy's like, well, you'd be surprised how many things that kills.
Yeah, I love that line.
Oh, it's so good.
She's just like not even concerned. You'd be surprised how many things that kills. Which there's a vampire movie or book or show or something. I don't remember what it is. I remember seeing it a long time ago. And I think it was a dramatic one. It wasn't like a campy making fun of them one. But this guy was like sticking stakes in people's chests to see if they're vampires, and they would like die. And he'd be like, see, they're a vampire. I told you. And like people were trying to convince him that like people will die if you do that too. And I cannot remember what it is, but every single time she says that line, I think about that movie or show, whatever. And I'm like, I wish I could remember what that was so I could watch it again.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, I cannot for the life of me remember anything else about it except that.
So my note on that line is that we do know, in fact, that won't kill a vengeance demon, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, but at this time we didn't know that.
No. I mean, you might as well try.
Buffy didn't know.
You might as well try, but it is kind of funny that in fact wouldn't have been a way to dispatch of this particular foe. But she goes in with gusto no matter what. Giles says that he doesn't want to kill her. He wants to reverse whatever effect she has on reality, or on this world or whatever, something like that. And like, Kay, is there something that he read that specifically says killing her would prevent that? I don't know. It seems like he wouldn't be against her dying, but also I guess maybe there's something that I missed somewhere along the line, that killing her wouldn't fix the wishes she's granted, and so he has to make sure that they reverse that stuff. Buffy kind of just questions why he's so convinced that however they dispatch of Anyanka is going to fix everything, and she says that the world is what it is, we fight, we die, wishing doesn't change that. And Giles says, I have to believe in a better world, and Buffy says, go ahead, I have to live in this one. Here's my biggest gripe of this episode. It has nothing to do with the plot holes or any of the stuff that doesn't make sense, but I feel like there's a message here somewhere that I just can't quite figure out. But we have like this exchange, and then we have the exchange later with Giles and Anyanka about like Anyanka saying, what makes you think that the other world's any better than this one? And Giles is like, it has to be. And so like there's like a very like strong indication of like hope and resilience that runs through Giles that doesn't really seem to run through the other characters. And I'm just wondering, like, why is Giles the one that gets to this conclude? Like, why is he the one that's so persevering and figures out how to fix everything? And like, what does that say about Giles? What does that say? Like, I mean, again, this is just a made up universe and none of this really matters, but also, like, I want there to be like a really powerful, deep message here, because I think that there's some cool lines and some cool dialogue bits, but at the same time, I'm just like, it's just Giles because I guess it made sense to be Giles, and that's the best way to situate everybody at the final encounter, I guess. I don't know. Like, I want there to just be a little bit more tangible, like, theme to this episode than we get. And there's a part of me that wishes, even though I enjoy the plot twist of Cordelia dying early, the fact that the payoff of that doesn't last very long because you almost immediately see Giles recover the necklace makes it even worse that we don't get a little bit more alternate, like, this Cordelia existing in this alternate reality and showing a potential way in which she could really grow fast if she was put against a lot of obstacles, and then taking that all away and kind of having that moment of like, Cordelia's got a ton of potential, but we don't, like, obviously when the spell is broken, we're just reset back to the Cordelia we've been stuck with, and then she has to like regain that slower. I don't know. I just think that there's some potential here with character growth or like character exploration that doesn't really happen in the way that I would have liked it to happen.
Yeah, I agree with that. It was just kind of like they wanted to have this and do this episode where everyone's personality was different than it was, and they just kind of used Cordelia to get there and didn't really let her be a part of it.
Yeah, because it really feels like it should be Cordelia's episode. It's really set up to be Cordelia's episode, and then she dies like 20 minutes in and isn't in the rest of the episode. And so it's kind of like, it's cool and it's fun to explore this world, but like, what is the focus of the second half of the episode? Because we kind of lose our focus after Cordelia dies. Giles mentions that Cordelia knew that he was meant to be Buffy's watcher, and that the Master sent his most vicious disciples to kill her. And that's when Buffy perks up that there's this, supreme vampire around and nobody's bothering to kill him. That seems silly. And asks where he is, and he tells her, and we cut to the Bronze, where she is walking through a very abandoned, not really happening club. There's some dead people lying around, the huge, but... all the vampires have evacuated, gone off to do their factory thing. And as she's exploring, she finds the puppy, who, by the way, is in fact in the basement, chained and in a cage. So like he's super locked in the basement. So that counter goes up one tick.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
And she just kind of...
Not even just locked in a basement. He's literally chained in a basement.
He's chained and locked in a basement. He's super screwed. As Buffy starts to turn to leave, Angel says her name. And, oh, dang, I called him Angel instead of the puppy. God, messed up the bit. And she pauses, and he says, "It's you. You don't remember. How could you?" And then he says he waited, but she never, and that he was supposed to help her, and that the Master rose, and he was allowed to live so that he could be punished, and he kept hoping that Buffy would come, and then says, "My destiny." And I'm just like, this exists in, like, the main world as well. Like, this, everybody puts Buffy up on a pedestal. It happens, and Angel is included in that. But man, this version of Angel is really putting her up on that pedestal.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And she replies, "Is this a get in my pants thing?"
Everyone talks like I'm the second coming.
So Angel apologizes, and she's just like, "Where's the Master?" And he says they're at his factory, and he can take her there. I never really paid enough attention to the set to see if it matches. Is this presumed to be the same factory that Spike and Drusilla reside in? Like, when did...
Probably, but I didn't really notice that it was like the same or anything.
Because they inherited that from the Anointed One. I can't remember, like, does that come into play the very first episode of season 2? Do we see the factory at all in season 1? I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't think we do.
I don't think we do either. But anyway...
All the vampires are underground in season 1.
Yeah. She goes to release him, and as she's kind of leaning over to undo his chains, the cross that she's wearing around her neck causes him to flinch, and that's when she says, "You've got to be kidding me," and steps away, and he says that he won't hurt her, and she's not having any of it, and he says, "You don't believe I want to help you," and then he stands and shows all of his wounds across his chest and says, "Believe I want him dead." And then we just kind of have this long pause. I'm still not convinced that this version of Buffy would have been like, "Okay, sure." I don't know. Maybe. But I feel like this version of Buffy would still be like, "Nah, you're a vampire. I'm not even gonna, mess with it." So, yeah. From there we cut to the Master's factory. And the Master's given this epic speech.
Some have argued that such an advancement goes against our nature. They claim that death is our art. I say to them, well, I don't say anything to them because I killed them. Undeniably, we are the world's superior race. Yet we have always been too parochial, too bound by the mindless routine of the predator. Hunt and kill, hunt and kill. Titillating? Yes. Practical? Hardly. Meanwhile, the humans, with their plebeian minds, have brought us a truly demonic concept. Mass production!
We really are living in a golden age.
Yes, most definitely. And there's for some reason, a wooden holding pen. Like, we got this, supposed to be, it's not, but supposed to be high-tech assembly line for, draining people of blood and everything. And they're starting it up. And then everyone a wooden holding pen.
Oh, yeah. And it's
And it's vampires.
Cheap, crappy wood, too. Because Oz is able to just break a section off of it with no real effort.
Yet he doesn't get out before someone lets him out.
Yeah, They're outnumbered at that point. They gotta wait for reinforcements. Anyway, yeah. So there's this whole elaborate assembly line thing that they're apparently doing because it makes perfect sense and don't question it. Giles is working on summoning Anyanka, and he kind of goes through the ritual, and she appears out of the shadowy corner and says, "Do you have any idea what I do to a man who uses that spell to summon me?" And apparently just some banter and then chokes him a little bit. That's all she does. There's just going to be a lot of cut back and forth here. A Cordette gets put on the assembly line. I like the line that she's still alive, you see, for the freshness. So these people are... It's horrific. It doesn't make any sense as far as why they would do this, but the act itself is really horrific. And the idea of somebody being at least semi-conscious while this happens, being at least somewhat aware. She's clearly dazed. She's been tased or something. Something has caused her to just go limp. I think it was they tased her real quick, and then she was laid down, and then all of these things punch into her and start draining her blood. It is a horrifying thing to imagine being put through. But I just can't help but think about how silly it is that this was their master plan.
It's not very high tech at all. And that blood's not going to last very long. It's going to spoil.
Yeah, the idea of mass production, but that they're kept alive for the freshness, those two things contradict each other a lot.
Yeah, they don't work.
So, Angel and Buffy show up. Angel asks, "What's the plan?" Buffy holds up a stake and says, "Don't fall on this," which is another just beautiful. Wish First Buffy's got some zingers too. I gotta hand it to Wish First Buffy. And then the glass. The wine glass of blood is handed off to the master, and he holds it up and says, "Welcome to the future." And all the vampires are like, "To the future, to the future."
Yeah.
It's just so silly. I love it.
Yeah. And then kind of begins the beginning of a fight. Mm-hmm. The giant fight in which Xander kills Angel, which I think it's funny considering he always wanted to.
Yeah.
Oz kills Willow. Mm-hmm. Kind of a little metaphor there since she just got caught cheating on him. And Buffy kills Xander. Mm-hmm. There's just too much to say about that.
So at the onset of this fight, I think my favorite part is Buffy fires like a single crossbow bolt, and the Master pulls Xander in front of him to block it. And then instantly, this room full of vampires, like, there's probably 20 plus vampires at least immediately around this woman. She's so outnumbered, and they all just run in panic.
Yeah.
She's got a crossbow! Run!
Well, and I mean, don't most of them know that that's the Slayer?
I don't know if they would, but even so, like, it's just funny to me. But here's my theory. Here's my deeper concept of at least the vampire portion of this. Because we already talked about that this machine isn't really about efficiency or anything. It's just about elitism, right? It's just so the Master can have his swanky blood in his wine glass kind of deal. Mm-hmm. And then we keep making the jokes about the crosses and how, like, oh, you can't do anything. They've got a cross. I feel like there's, like, a kind of, is you really have to stretch it, but there's kind of like a hidden upper class commentary going on here, where the vampires, since they have such control and are so sure of themselves, are just useless when it comes to actually fighting, when actually doing the work, because they're just so easily ruling everything. And so, like, any kind of resistance, they're just like, it's not worth it. Someone holds up a cross, they're like, it's not worth it. Like, I'm not going to fight that fight. If somebody shows up with a crossbow, I'm going to panic and run. It's almost to the point where the vampires are so privileged in this area that they don't even know how to be, like, menacing vampires anymore, because everything just comes so easy to them. Mm-hmm. And it's like a huge stretch to get there, but I still kind of love that it's kind of there. Angel rushes to the very secure wooden pin and throws the crossbar off so that everybody can get out. Oz immediately is able to break part of the cage and use it as a stake.
But he was not able to do this before the door was open.
No. And yeah, there's some cuts back and forth as all of those deaths happen that we've mentioned before. You get some back and forth between Giles and Anyanka, where Giles kind of says that she's going to change it back and that her only power lies in the wishing, and she's like, wrong, and she holds him up against the wall and strangles him, and he spots her necklace, which is magically around her neck again, and pulls it off of her, elbows her in the face, and then there's this exchange about, you know, what makes you think the other world is going to be any better. Well, you basically already said that it's better, but, you know, also Cordelia said it was better. Like, there's a lot of evidence that it's going to be better, but then he has the lovely line of, because it has to be, and he smashes the necklace. At the same time, Buffy and the Master have been very singularly focused on each other, approaching each other, throwing everybody else out of the way, and they have a very quick back and forth where the Master easily gains the upper hand and snaps Buffy's neck as the wish versus reality fades out and we go back into our regular world. So yeah, that's just the easiest way that I could summarize that. This whole, like, section is really cool. I love the slowdown effect. I love the back and forth. It's hard to summarize, but it's really fun to watch. And you mentioned before the deaths that occur and, like, the cool things that happen in nature of that. I think even more so than the fact that Xander kills Angel, but the moment when Angel turns to Buffy and is just, like, so broken, is just like, because, you know, he already, you know, talked about her being his destiny, and in this reality he was a broken man forever, right? He was living on the streets. He had this one guy give him a pep talk, and he saw this girl that he was so drawn to that he just built up in his mind was gonna save him, and then went to where he thought she was going to be. She wasn't there. Found that the Master was there, and that the Master was able to capture him and keep him in prison further still, where he was tortured for, I mean, potentially years at this time. Like, we don't really understand the timeline, but if we're going from, like, the beginning of season 1 to beginning of season 2, like, this if we're thinking that this happens at the similar time that we're in season 3, then like there's a good chance Angel's been in this position for a couple of years now, being tortured, and finally sees Buffy, and then goes to help her on one mission, and then goes to like protect her because he runs to her like defense when he sees Xander going after her, and then is immediately staked and turns and is just so heartbroken and says her name as he crumbles to ash, and Buffy is just like, well, that's a dead vampire, and just keeps going into the fight.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
It's so like, oh my gosh, no, Buffy, no.
And like the Oz killing Willow bit, like the funny thing is that in our version of it, when Oz first sees Willow, he is so drawn to her, like in such a way that it's very similar to the way that Angel is drawn to Buffy. Like it's just like, oh, it's that love at first sight thing. And like here he knows that she is a vampire, that she is with the master, and there's none of that. And he is all about protecting his team, and like Larry's there struggling with her, and he just without a second hesitation pushes her against that board to dust her. And then Buffy stakes Xander, and we all cheer. Is that right?
That's pretty much it. That is pretty much it.
All right, back in actual world, Cordelia's making a wish that Buffy never came to Sunnydale, and Anya turns around with her very pretty human face. Emma Caulfield's great, by the way. I don't think we've spent enough time talking about how amazing she is, but we're going to spend a ton of time talking about how amazing she is in the future, so we'll have our moment. But she says done, and nothing happens, and she's slightly confused, and Cordelia continues to add to her wish and says, oh no, wait, I wish she'd never been born. And then Anya's still like, okay, done, and nothing happens. And she says that Xander should never know the touch of a woman, and that Willow needs to be covered in monkey hair, which is oddly specific.
Right?
And
I thought that on that one too. I'm like, that's a weird thing to wish on someone.
That's the level of menace that Cordelia has, that she tries to devise punishments so specific that, yeah, she just has it at a drop of a hat when she's listing off things that she wishes. So yeah, she continues to wish things upon people, and Anya continues to be confused as to why things aren't happening, and it pans over to our Scoobies, who are smiling and acting like everything's right as rain, and nobody has any memories of any of this, because in this instance that's actually true, which is
and there's a
pretty
question
cool.
with why Anya doesn't know why it's not working, because like
she is Anyanka. She remembers Giles smashing her necklace, right?
So here's the bit that I found the most interesting. And this is like one of the bigger plot holes, but somebody's already come up with a reasoning for why. But I think somewhere in the episode, Giles mentions that if her power source is broken, all of the wishes that she has made will be reversed. Like, all of the wishes she has granted will be reversed.
Like, ever?
Which we know can't be true, because in Hell's Bells, a demon comes to threaten their marriage because of a wish she granted that turned him into a demon, right?
Right.
So the
and he's still a demon.
Yeah, the fix for that is that it's that reality. So that reality, all of her wishes were reversed, and then this was a different reality, and it becomes that weird reality space again. But it is like the canon that is in this episode of Vengeance Demons does not really match the canon that we know from the whole series at large. But I kind of like the notion of that there is the chaotic nature of Vengeance Demons also leaves an opportunity for someone to just reverse a spell like that. But we know, like, later on they can undo spells themselves as well, like, because Anya does that in season 7, the mechanics of which spells can happen and can be undone is very confusing.
Yeah, it changes over the years.
Yeah, which, like, for me, the Vengeance Demons are some of the most interesting Buffyverse like original monsters. Like, I just think that they're really cool, and the aspects of the recruiting process especially cracks me up. Like when Dahafra tries to recruit Willow, that moment is just like, it makes me feel like it's just a giant pyramid scheme, and I think it's just so funny to me to think of vengeance demons that way.
The Wish is a really good one.
Oh, I love it. Like, it makes no sense. It's just utter chaotic energy, and I love it. But it does leave me that, like, I don't have a final note for this episode. It does leave me that little bit of moment of just like, this is truly just a filler episode. And it's a fun, really, like, fantastic filler episode. But there's no real message that I have as a takeaway here, other than people in this reality need to quickly learn to never make wishes, which actually becomes more of a running gag as the series goes on, where people just don't make wishes because they know vengeance demons exist.
I could think of a couple of wishes I'd like to make. Not even gonna pretend.
So here's my question. Here's my question. This is what we're gonna end the episode on. So, like, if you're in the, like, you just gotta meet your quota, and you found someone who has been scorned in whatever way that they've been scorned, as a vengeance demon, if you're hanging around trying to wait for that wish to grant so you can help meet your quota, and impress the higher-ups, if they're just, like, hanging out and they're like, man, I wish I had a chocolate bar, would you just pop a chocolate bar in there and be like, job done, and then move on to the next one? Would that count? Would that technically, I mean, you're granting their wish. Would that count towards your quota? I feel like this is this is the important question that we need to end the episode on. Because I feel like that's more likely to happen. Be like, you just went through a really terrible breakup. Don't you wish? And I was just like, yeah, I wish I had, like, just a tub of ice cream. Man, that'd be great right now.
It has been very silly. It's a really fun episode. I'm guessing with, like, Doppelgangland.
Yes.
We are going to have just as much fun.
Oh, yeah.
Next week is Amends, and I'm going to just have to say it's one of my least favorite episodes. I don't know why. A lot of times I say things like that, and then I change my mind when I watch it while taking notes.
Yeah.
When I watch it critically and I read the script and everything. So we'll see. But I remember it as being kind of a boring one.
Yeah, I just feel like there's gonna be a lot to unpack because, one, it's a heavy Angel episode, and like that, I've been enjoying more this watch through. Like, I've been really, like, deep diving into Angel more. I've been deep diving into everybody more. I don't know what I'm talking about. Like, literally all I'm doing is overanalyzing every aspect of the show right now. But it's also the introduction of the first, and it's kind of, like, funny that we just kind of get these random, like, introduction of, like, major players from later in the series just kind of strewn throughout season 3. But we just got Anya. Next week we're gonna get the first. I'm excited for it. It'll be a good discussion.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I'm ready to discuss it. I remember it as one that I didn't like very much, so we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens with it
when
this
I
time.
watch it critically.
I'm very indifferent about the episode. I have no strong feelings at all about the episode, which probably means I don't like it that much, because I would have feeling like, I don't hate it. It's not an episode that I hate, but it's not an episode that I'm just like, oh yeah, we got to this episode, I'm so excited. I think it's just kind of there, and I think that may be, like, it's not a Go Fish or something like that for me. Like, Go Fish, I was actually dreading having to rewatch. This one, I'm excited to rewatch, but I don't really know why. Anyway, thank y'all all so much for listening to this podcast. And this is where we say bye.
Bye.
We had a hard time ending that podcast. I was struggling.
Yeah. That's a fun one.
We've only been talking for over 2 hours. I don't know why.
Well, 2 hours is about normal for us.